if you love what you do 5 days, the 2 days is a bonus. But if you hate what you do 5 days and only live for the 2 days, you got a terrible life. So love what you do. And he said that may be that you've got to work for the public service. Maybe you work for a big company, small company, self-employed. Find your niche that you really love. And I've had to say to some people, honestly, you should not be in business on your own. Go and get a job.
Hello, and welcome back to Tuesday Chats. So for those of you who have been on here before, you know that this is a half-hour or so conversation where we sit and talk about all things life and business and all the fun stuff that happens in between. Today, I am joined by Michael Watson. Now, he and I have only met a couple of times, but every conversation that I have had, I have left feeling so much more empowered and knowledgeable, thanks to Michael's generosity with his wisdom. So, Michael, would you please introduce yourself to the people who are listening and explain a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Certainly. Thank you. I'm Michael Watson. I'm a chartered accountant. I walked into chartered accountancy on the 7th of December 1965, 60 years ago. I've had a career in business as well. My family for generations was in China, and so I've taken a number of clients into overseas businesses. I established a snack food manufacturing business for a client in Malacca in Malaysia. I've done international work with Qantas, Air New Zealand, New Zealand Insurance, Ansett, different international matters that they've had that I've given advice on. 2 different international partnerships for government employees health fund in Wollongong. I have a very close relationship and long-standing with a number of my clients. That's extended even to directorships, being an executor, being a power of attorney, delivering eulogies, delivering speeches at weddings. The strength of the relationship has been all important to me. I believe I'm here to use my skills to enrich the lives of others, and that's what I try to do, and I get great satisfaction out of it.
Yeah. And I will say that in as I said, the discussions that we've had, you've absolutely enriched my life. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
With the work, given that you've done now 60 years in business, that just boggles my brain, given that I haven't actually even reached 60 years yet. I got another 10 before I even get to that. But I love that you are so dedicated and so passionate about what it is that you do. But what is it that you love the most about what you get to do?
It's the variation of it. At the moment, apart from my practice, which every client runs a different type of business, even if you've got 2 restaurants, they run them differently. So every piece of advice, everything is brand new. It's not like working for the same company with the same people, suppliers, conditions, products. And I've got a client of mine who thinks that I'm more articulate than they are. So we've got a development in for a lawn cemetery at Middle Dural in Sydney. On Thursday, I've got to attend a Teams meeting with 220 complainants, where it's me against the mob to explain why the development should go ahead. But leading from that, at a number of funerals I've been to, I've worked out that people deliver very bad eulogies. Either there was someone who knew the person 20 years ago and doesn't really know anything current, or alternatively, they're so emotional that they can't really get the speech out. So I formed a company called Living Eulogies and used some of the people in my BX group to film people delivering their own eulogy. So at the funeral, when it comes time for them to do it, they will appear on screen because they know themselves best and they know what they would like to leave with the congregation as far as this is what I'm about, this is what I'd like you to remember me for. In addition to that, in the lawn cemetery, we'll have a QR code so that people will be able to get on that and actually see and hear a visual of that person. So someone might say, look, I was 4 when my grandfather died. I don't remember what he was like. They can go out to the cemetery, actually look at it, hear him, see him, and experience that. So a living history of the people. From that, it got me to write, which is I'm in the process of doing, my first book on family history, from my 8 great-grandparents down to me, quite a section on me, and then underneath me, my descendants, as to what they think in the world at the moment. What are your 5 greatest worries? What were your 5 greatest worries? One of them said, Y2K. I'd forgotten all about how tense we were when 2000 was coming up, that the computers were going to all crash and planes fall out of the sky and that. But different people have different concerns about things. Hence, in 60 years' time, some descendant would pick it up and say, yes, they were very right to be worried about China's expansion or the situation in the Middle East or the presidency in America or the population in Australia and migration, whatever it was, they get to see it with the advantage of hindsight to say what concerned people in 2026. So that led me to go to a second book, which was the things that I've learned in business, because people will often say to me, I'm going to tell you something unique. And I think in the last 60 years, I've probably heard this 500 times. It's unique to you, not unique to me.
I can just imagine.
So there's common threads of things that people should be aware of, common mistakes that people make being in business, and they can make life much easier with a bit of planning and a bit of professional advice. The third book I'm writing is, Can We Save Australia and Is It Worth It? So I've got my ideas, if I was a benevolent dictator of Australia, as to what I would do and implement to save Australia, because it's in a deep recession at the moment, and governments are ignoring that on all political parties, not picking on one particular political party at all. My father received an award from a Labor government and an award from a Liberal government as well. My father was a migrant here in 1948. One of my ancestors was a Chinese lady in the Royal Palace, so I'm part Chinese. So comments that I make where people say, oh, that sounds very political, very racist, whatever. They're not. I'm just commenting on how the situation is in Australia. And no political party at the moment has got a solution for the dichotomy that exists between a conflict between what's happening at a federal level and what's happening at a state level. Just a small expansion of that. For instance, the federal government at the moment thinks that our population in Australia should be 40 million people, bring in 12 million more migrants. 5 million roughly would go into Sydney and Melbourne and 2 million to Brisbane and Gold Coast. Right now, Sydney with 5 million people hasn't got the infrastructure to handle 5 million people. Not housing, not roads, not facilities, not hospitals, fireys, ambulances, police, corrective services, whatever. You double the population, how is that miraculously going to happen? Federal government says we want a bigger skill base and we want a bigger tax base. State government says we can't handle the population. So the state government says if you increase the GST from 10% to 15%, because we're the sixth lowest rate country in the world, the extra 5% that we get directly, we could afford to do some of these things with a bit of planning. Federal government says that the tax office that we pay for collects the GST, and if we kicked up the GST without giving tax cuts, then we wouldn't get re-elected. So the federal government wants more population, states don't. State want more revenue, federal government doesn't. That's a dichotomy that no political parties at all can address or are hoping to address. It will just continue to be a massive problem. Now, someone like Harry Trubegoff from Meriton then said population of Australia should be 100 million by 2050 because we're 5% of the world's land mass. And accordingly, in 8 billion people, we should be 400 million people. So therefore, it's very selfish if we're not at least 100 million people. And Meriton and Mirvac would build all 50-storey blocks of units all over the place, more common than windmills on the horizon. And that's what would house the people. But again, construction takes some time. You can't keep on bringing in people. We've got about 1.3 million people have come in the last 4 years. Temporary protection visas, family reunification, people coming from New Zealand for permanent residency. We've got about 1.1 million according to the Bureau of Education, Department of Education, 1.1 million foreign students in the country at the moment. That's causing pressure on the housing market and the rent market. So as long as the property market keeps on going up, people think that we're in some sort of a boom. But all the other, we're not, and all the other expenditure that's happening at the moment is all happening on a government level. The size of the public service now has grown to 2.7 million people, federal, state and municipal. The wages bill is $249 billion a year. Most government departments don't create anything. They don't create wealth. They examine things, they move money around, but they don't do it. I said that to someone and said, oh yes, but public servants pay tax. If you pay someone $100 and they give you back $30 in tax, to me, you've lost $70. If you don't get value for it, and we just get further into debt, what do we do about that? So I've got my solutions to a number of issues that are facing Australia at this point in time, 3 in particular. But there's a lot of clever people in this country, but no one asks their opinion. And there's a lot of apathy that people don't put their hand up and say, why don't you try this? And as long as that keeps on happening, all we do is go from election to election where most people in politics just want to be focused on being re-elected in 3 years' time. They don't know how to fix the economy. Now, I see it from a guy when I had a Penrith office. A guy said to me, feet on the street, that's what you need, mate. People are smart on the street. Discretionary expenditure, nail salons, hair salons, art galleries, framing places, health food stores, anything which is florists, anything that's discretionary expenditure is really in the doldrums at the moment. People are using their money to pay electricity and school fees and mortgages or rent, and they haven't got any money left over to do the rest of it. And the people who, 1/3 of people who own their homes, they have money on deposit, but they're more elderly people. I can say that being old. There's more elderly people, and their propensity to spend reduces. So they buy a lot of gifts for grandchildren. They send a lot on medical needs, but they don't go out and buy things to stimulate the economy. They don't go to the movies. They don't go and eat at restaurants. They don't do different things, go to shows. Once they get into their 70s or 80s, they just don't do that. As a result of that, the inflationary bit that's on the other 2/3 that have a mortgage or are paying rent is that it's terribly depressing to their income. They've got nothing left to buy a cup of coffee. I used to buy 2 cups of coffee at my little local cafe. I now make one at home before I leave and bring one in a thermos. They just don't spend. So cafes and restaurants are going broke rapidly. The answer to some of their housing issues are that the government says we need 170,000 extra homes. My way of thinking is we're not addressing 2 things. First of all, with all the people that are coming into the country, if you've got 1.3 million new people, even at 4 to a house, you need 300,000 residences just for the new people. But there's lots of other people that don't have housing who sleep rough. Lane Cove National Park keeps a car park open. Women with their children sleep in their cars in the car park because they keep the toilet block open and they do it for security. There's a lot of people doing it very hard in the country. And apart from the charities, the government hasn't got to focus on those people either. And unless someone really picks up the banner and runs with it and says, look, we've got to be doing some dramatic things in this country, but all we do is plod along. So let's recognise a new country. Let's say that Prince Andrew shouldn't be in succession to the throne. Let's say anything that's going to take anything off the front page that's really meaningful, that would benefit the lives of people. And the secret of that is, first of all, affordable housing. And how are they going to do that? 9,000 builders and developers, according to ASIC, went to liquidation in the last 4 years. Many of them decades-old companies, not companies that are just entering the market and fall over. So even if we got the approvals and the finance for the new dwellings, who is there to build them? We don't have the builders and developers anymore. Household names go broke all the time.
I was talking to a developer just on the weekend and he was saying that he has, I think he said 9 builders that he works with, and all of them have been through at least 3 major financial crises globally. So he said you've got multi-generational builders because for exactly that reason, like if they've been able to most recently stay in business beyond the fallout following COVID and all that flow-on effect, then they've got their feet on the ground and their head in the right spot to be able to cope with pretty much anything and to be able to rely on them.
No, people building for fixed price contracts, they find out materials are out of whack. They've got to pay too much money to get the trades. So what they do in many cases is they cut the quality. And near me at Silverwater, there's an area called Carlingford Road. They've built 1,200 units in different blocks, not terribly high rise. And all 1,200 owners have signed a petition now that it is substandard work.
Oh, really?
Smoke alarms don't work, finishes are not right, these things aren't how they should be. Every one of the units, 1,200 units, because people then build to a price, they don't build to a quality.
And it must be, my assumption is that a builder doesn't get into building because they want to put out shoddy work, that they actually want to create a home for someone that is, it's something to be proud of. And so it must for them to be in a situation where they feel like they have to, the only way that they can keep their own business afloat is to put out substandard work. Like, it's soul destroying on every level, isn't it, for both sides of the scenario?
It can get much worse, because if you paid 400,000 for an extension and it's 3/4 finished and the builder falls over and you say, look, it's only 100,000 to go, you'll never get a builder to do it for 100,000. I'll say, what? I'm therefore warranting the first $300,000 worth of work, and I'm telling you it's not up to standard.
Yeah.
So people get left with semi-complete dwellings that no one can finish off, and the bank won't lend them any more money to increase the price to get it finished. So you drive around places that you think are almost at lock-up stage. There's no one on site, no materials, no nothing. They just sit there for months.
Yeah.
That's what the problem is.
And deteriorate in the meantime, don't they? Because they're not locked up and they're not sealed against the weather and other things that are going to do damage.
Correct. And if you're not in residency for more than 6 months, it can invalidate your insurance policy if you read the fine print. And squatters can get in. There's a million different problems.
Yeah.
But the really big problems in this country, the three biggest problems, are that we're not spending money wisely. So we have $1 trillion debt. It costs us $3 billion each week for our interest bill. The government's not addressing that at all and says it'll get much worse before it gets much better. Why is that the case? We're spending $251 million with a new thing called the Centre for Disease Control to examine if there's another COVID or a pandemic, what should we do? Other than West Australia, Queensland and Victoria closing their borders, what should we really do as a federal government? So they're forming that $251 million down. $660 million is going to go now for the feasibility, again, of a very fast train from Newcastle to Sydney via the Central Coast. Doesn't mean they're going to build it, just means they're going to look at it. So between those two projects, there's nearly $1 billion that'll have nothing to show other than some information.
Okay. Where's all the good news in this, Michael?
The good news in this is that Australians are very hardworking. They're very clever. There's a lot of very clever people here who have invented a lot of inventions over the years and a lot of research that's happening. So a number of charities that I try to be philanthropic with have done massive changes in heart, stroke, arthritis, all sorts of cancers. They're very bright. But there's about 800 scientists in the last 4 years have been retrenched. So we're not being the lucky country anymore. You have to invest some money to get a return, and we need to be investing the money in the right areas. So what would the right areas be? Just in my simple way of thinking. The guy who built the Harbour Bridge did a feasibility study of saying, if you dammed the northern rivers in Queensland, you'd stop herbicides and pesticides and fertilisers going onto the barrier reef and killing it. If you turned it inland, you could irrigate southern Queensland and New South Wales. What do you need it for? Irrigation, bushfires, everything else. So a continent like us needs water from the north where it's plentiful, down south where it's rare. That plan was upgraded by a guy called Saravi Parvo, who came here as a migrant, ran a very successful public company. He did a 2-page article in The Age, Sydney Morning Herald and something else, and said, I've upgraded this plan so that you can bring this through a series of dams, major and minor, even as far as across the border, the Murrumbidgee irrigation area and into northern Victoria. And then in, I think, 2002, Alan Jones and John Laws and Jerry Harvey and a number of people put together $2 million each and upgraded the plan, but this time to also bring the wet season of Kakadu down through the centre of Australia and into the top of South Australia. So all of that plan that could be done at that stage would have a constant source of water. We could become the food bowl for Asia because our manufacturing has gone down from 19% of GDP to only 5%. We're not manufacturing anymore. Where's our car companies? Where's our woolen mills? Where's our cotton companies? Where's anything? We're just importing everything now, but everyone's got to eat. So we focused on being the food bowl for Asia. We could really turn this country around. Now, what would you do with that? People don't want to work in the country. So you say to migrants who come from a farming background, like in Sri Lanka or Africa or the Middle East, if you go and migrate here and stay in a country area for 5 years and don't break any laws, we'll consider you for permanent residency. That would grow the population, not in Sydney, but spread it into the country areas. So then what do you do with that? We've got tunnels everywhere with long wall mining equipment. We can dig through all the sandstone. What about if we had an 8-lane road or a 16-lane road going from Penrith to Lithgow under the Blue Mountains to open up all of the west? What if we had at the other side a tunnel that could take trains, whether they're very fast trains or whatever, but then the 9 key state designated growth areas in the west of the state could all become reachable from Sydney, but the communication, transport, everything would improve dramatically. So then the last thing we've got our foreign debt. What do you do with $1 trillion worth of foreign debt? How do we service it? How do we repay it? My answer to that is, when I started in chartered accountancy, 30% of all super funds had to be in Commonwealth bonds. We have $4 trillion in super at the moment. If 30% was in Commonwealth bonds, the government would get $1.2 trillion. They'd pay off their foreign debt. They'd bring the debt onshore, so we're not subject to foreign exchange fluctuations anymore. And the interest that would be paid would be taxed in Australia, not going overseas tax-free. And we'd have 200 million left over up our sleeve. With that, I'd build the dam situation and get a constant source of water. There's a lot of people more clever than me. Whether people have got ideas or not, they're not enunciating them. So governments don't have someone pulling on their coattails to say, I've got a great idea of how to save Australia. I haven't got all the answers, and maybe my answers wouldn't work, but no one's looking at them. That's my point. So we just stumble along, and things get worse and worse, and we bring more and more people into the cities. We have less and less people in the country. Everything goes haywire.
Given that I grew up in the country, it does not make any sense to me why people don't want to live there. I love the isolation. I love being away from people and getting to choose when I get noise or otherwise.
I like great friends who lived in Cooma. The parents went there during the expansion in Cooma, where it got its own airport despite being only an hour out of Canberra for the Snowy scheme. They decided it would be better to be a retailer supplying things to the people on the scheme than working on it. So they had a shop in Cooma. Cooma went down to maybe just under 10,000 people, and the government decided to offer employment to 2 government departments that would move out to Cooma. Population went over 12,000. Suddenly there was cafes, infrastructure, all sorts of things. So when you put people in a country area, doctors get attracted, solicitors, accountants, Woolworths, BWS, service stations, everything, suddenly it booms because the population is there to justify it, and they're all earning an income. They're not slaving away in primary industry.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even I am from a primary industry background, and you're right. It can be a slog to be in that industry if that's what you choose. But I've never understood the whole perception that living in the city is the better option. That it's easier. I would love to see more people just get out and experience something different out of the city. Having said that, I like the quiet. So I don't know. There's a bit of a, do we just keep the secret?
There's also, every place is different.
Yeah.
I said to a client of mine who got into his 60s, very wealthy, and he said, I've nearly been all around the world. I said, you've been all around Australia? And he went, oh, no.
No.
Have you ever been to West Australia? I can tell you things he should look at there. Go to Tasmania. For the rest of his life, for the 14 years of his life, every year he went to Tasmania. He loved it so much. Only 500,000 people there. They've just hit 500,000. A million interesting things to see. Cleanest water in the world, vineyards, restaurants, historic places, Port Arthur. We go down to Bruny Island and go across on the ferry and have a look at what they've got there. Honey tasting, whiskey tastings, all sorts of amazing things. You can go into a place and be deafened by the bird song, and they say you can recognise 19 species of parrots here. So in Tasmania, they don't have feral cats. If any are found to be like that, they put a bounty on them and professional hunters get rid of them. So the wildlife stays as wildlife.
Yeah.
And you can get away with that and just say, isn't this fantastic that this should be happening? Or go into the bush and look up at the sky where there's not the distraction of the light of the city, but you can actually see the stars and see how fabulous they are. There's lots of things going for the country and the more relaxed lifestyle in the fact that you're not having to travel great distances in the city. And even when you're travelling distances, the roads are pretty good to be able to do it because they don't have the volume of traffic. So people can get around quite easily. And I'll say to someone, I went to a school where predominantly there were boarders and that most of them came from the country. And I'd say, oh, how far do you live away from town? Oh, only 50 kilometres. If you had to drive 50 kilometres in Sydney, you'd go, oh my goodness, this is terrible. Why do I have to be in a car constantly? But they're not.
Yeah.
So,
Well, 50 Ks is maybe 40 minutes at most, maybe
right.
Usually more like half an hour because you've just gone straight on in if you've got a decent road. Whereas 50 kilometres through traffic, that's like hell on earth. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people like that way of life, but you need a critical mass, and that was my idea of putting migrants into the country areas. Because once you've got enough people, you will attract doctors and schools, teachers, and the people you need to make it into a mini city, not just a rural outpost with 4 buildings in it. The reason I say that is in 1972, I travelled through Queensland and I found myself stuck in Bowen one night, and there were literally 4 buildings there in Bowen in Queensland.
Yeah.
Natural deepwater harbour, been planned for about 50 years, almost the mango capital of where they'd rot on the ground because they couldn't afford to pick them, pack them and freight them. And there was the 4 buildings in the city at that stage, 1972.
Yeah.
Just fascinated me. The old things of a one-horse town. I thought, this is pretty much like it. But it was a great place and great people. It just needed more development.
Yeah. I haven't actually been to Bowen yet, but my dad had a couple of investment properties up there and he raved about it because it was such an easy place to visit and to live. He had some of his extended family were up there, so he used to go up there every so often in the last years of his life. And yeah, he loved the place. So it's
Well, at the same time, I went to Airlie Beach, and Airlie Beach had a guy called Hans Muller, who was a real estate agent who had 4 little units that you could rent out, like a mini motel. Then there was the Airlie Beach itself, which was owned by a solicitor up to the crest of the hill, and the other side was owned by another solicitor who just inherited it, that went down, and on that was an airstrip, and Ansett landed on one and TAA in Proserpine, or the other way around. But 2 guys owned all of that. And I said to some people, this would be really great overlooking the Whitsundays and that. This would be a magical place to buy some land. Everyone said, oh, I'll never go up in value. Now you look at Airlie Beach right through to Shute Harbour. It's just a massive development and so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating, isn't it, to see how places where so many people have said, oh, it'll never do whatever. Yeah. I'm glad those predictions didn't come true.
Will Rogers, who was the guy who was the cowboy, who was the raconteur, who used to do a few little rope tricks and that and talk to the audience, he said, you should invest in land. They aren't making any more of it.
Yep. Yep.
And that was the reason for the lawn cemetery as well. There's 5 million people in Sydney. According to Catholic cemeteries, 30% of people want to get buried for religious beliefs in particular. That's 1.5 million people. There are no grave sites left in Sydney. All of them, 778 acres at Rookwood, is not full, but they've got no spare space. People have pre-bought plots to bury someone in the future. So Gore Hill, Waverley, Botany, Macquarie, Rookwood, all the cemeteries in the city are all filling up and say, in 2 years' time, you won't be able to buy a grave plot.
Yeah.
So where are 1.5 million people going to be buried? And that's one of the things I'm having with I think a number of smaller lawn cemeteries would be a lot better than having great big cemeteries anywhere. It's easier for people to travel to, etc. It's just a new one opened up at Wallachia, 78 kilometres from the GPO. If you want to go out there to visit people or have a service, it's a good stretch of the legs.
So it's a day's trip, isn't it, really?
Indeed.
Yeah, instead of just being able to fit it into
that's with our current population. If they want to bring 5 million more people into Sydney, where do we get 3 million graves from? Use the old mines at Broken Hill and just throw the coffins into them? What is the outcome for it? And see, a lot of faiths believe that people are raised up on Judgment Day, body and soul, so they don't want to be cremated, they want to be buried. And particularly the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith and the Catholics don't really fancy cremation. So the result of, and people have said who are objecting to this, they should make it mandatory to be cremated. If it's against your beliefs all your life, why should you do that? Because someone says we haven't got room for cemeteries anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all of those things that come with population growth, there's so many things that don't, I think, really ever get properly considered in the bigger picture I can't, like when you were saying before about them wanting to push Australia's population to 100 million people. That's crazy. I can't imagine what it's like. I don't know what it'll be by the time it's.
But Trubegoff said it should be that by 2050, and he's an elderly man, so he won't be around to see it.
Yeah.
Then the federal government said 40 million is probably more appropriate, but in a shorter period of time, because we need skilled workers. A lot of migrants who come in aren't skilled workers.
Yes.
Not at all. And that was the complaint from some of the people who said, I think we're allowing in economic refugees who think they're going to have a better standard of living than actual people who can contribute to the society. So like when my dad came here in 1948, he loved the place. He could hardly wait to get married to someone local and become an Australian.
Yeah.
And people said to him at different stages, as he had an international career. One stage he was the New South Wales Agent General in London. And people had said, oh, I bet you wish you were going back to live in England. I said, no, I don't. His sister and part of our family lived in California after 1948 when they moved out of China. And Dad had a green card there and could have lived there as well. Said, I don't want to be an American. I love Australia.
Yeah.
So as long as people come here and want to assimilate and be part of Australia, which is multicultural, as opposed to multiracial, where people want to make it their own little, whatever it happens to be, where they came from. That's when you haven't got the integration of people. That's when you get the conflicts.
Yeah.
Not all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, to see the communities that work well when you've got like lots of different descendants from different areas of the world compared to those that don't, and what's the forces, I guess, that influence that.
I knew a guy called Doug Spurway. He was the head greenkeeper at my golf club I belonged to forever. And I was only a young man and he wasn't. And he said the best thing that ever happened to him was the Second World War, because in the same platoon they had people who from Silvertails from the North Shore, Jewish boys from the eastern suburbs, knock-around people, crooks, everything. You're all in it together, interdependent on each other for your safety and survival. And so you got on. So people were far more tolerant in the 50s and 60s. But then against that, someone reminded me that Arthur Calwell had introduced the White Australia policy, that you could come here as long as you were white. That's hardly the case now. It's believed that about 7% of our population comes from an Indian background, 7% from a Chinese background. But a lot of those people want to integrate and become Australians. And I have Chinese friends whose children can't speak Chinese at all. So you're in Australia, you might look a bit Chinese, but you're Australian, so you can learn Australian and that's it.
It's interesting. I think it doesn't do justice to their history, though, if they don't, like, particularly if you're, as a Australian child, if you've got a parent who speaks multi-languages, right? So they've got to speak Chinese and English. Why not learn both? So that you can actually communicate with all of your family, not just the ones who happen to live where you do.
They learn their history and they learn their culture and they may learn their religion, but they don't learn the language necessarily because they want to break the ties. I had in my office here, my son and I as Anglicans, 2 guys from Macedonian High Church, 2 brothers who are very devout Hindus, and 1 Muslim guy. All respected each other's religions. The way Indian guys took a day off for Diwali, their festival of light, everyone respected that fact. They respected that Christmas was a big deal. It wasn't a big deal to them, but it was a big deal to the other faiths. So it was respected that way. And people got on. It's a tolerance of other people's beliefs.
Yeah. And it's, I think it's really important that we do that, because it's something I think that in Australian society we don't do enough of. I know I lived for a year in Malaysia and have gone back there a couple of times last year, and to see how you've got a strong Christian community, there's a strong Buddhist community, there's a lot of Muslim people with about 70 odd, I think, % of the population of Malay, and Hindu. I think, which ones have I lost? Anyway, there's 4 major religions there, right? And they all know about each other's religions. They all respect each other's belief systems. They all support the Muslim people when they're going through Ramadan, are not eating during daylight hours, and all those other things that come with those different celebrations. And there's a lot of public holidays to respect that these people, it's important for them, and others it's important at different times. And yet it just works. And it comes with an awareness and an openness and an education and a respect from every level of society for all those different belief systems. So
I set up this snack food manufacturing business in a noodle business in Malacca. And the people who were the executives were Chinese Malays. And so they have a different attitude about things. I knew the majority of the workers would be of the Muslim faith, and a lot of them would also be from Indonesia, where they have cheap labour, even though the Malay price isn't much. They have Indonesians in there. So I said, if we've got majority of Muslim people, why don't we get halal approval? Why don't we put the little yellow arrows everywhere pointing towards Mecca for people who want to pray? We can put in a couple of prayer rooms, one for males and one for females, and I'll put in a halal kitchen so that we can give them breakfast and lunch. They're probably too poor to really afford much dinner, but that will get them going. Then they were asked if they could sleep on sacks on the floor in the factory. So there wasn't a problem either. Because you try to work in with people. People are earning $7 a day and trying to keep their family back home supported with that and live themselves. You try to make their burden as easy as possible. And they appreciate it. And as a result of that, they walk around with a smile on their face, whistling, playing music, whatever, and they're very happy for the job. You know, you don't treat them like slaves.
Yeah. Tell me, I 100% agree. And it's so, with some of that lateral thinking, a little bit extra planning, it's amazing how much you can make a workplace like that really hum, because everybody feels supported and acknowledged and seen in what it is that they actually need from a physical requirement as well as the spiritual side. Yeah.
And one of the things in business also is my aunt was a paralegal under MacArthur in the occupation of Japan, also in Korea and that. But at that time, he brought in a guy, hyphenated surname, Edwards Deemy, to work with some companies. He wanted to beat the people, but not to conquer the people. So Edwards Deemy worked with 4 little known companies called Sony, Sanyo, Citizen, and Kawasaki, made them international companies. And he had some basic rules about the purpose of being in business. He said there's only one purpose of being in business. Everyone says, make a profit, be a good corporate citizen, whatever. He said, you're in business to give the customer what the customer wants. If you say, I know what you want, I've got to know you well enough to understand what it is that you want out of our relationship so that I can work in with you. Not me dominate and say, oh yes, I've got a huge practice and I'm vastly experienced and I know what you need, etc. It's not going to work. I've got to meet your needs. And that was his definition of it. He also had the definition of internal customers. If I say to an employee, I want you to give me a trial balance by Friday, I've time framed it. I've told him what product I want. I expect it to be of a standard. And at the end of the week, you'll get paid your salary if you don't stuff up with all the work. It's exactly like an external sale. So you have internal customers. And he asked the question, why do people work for you? Are you the best employer in the world, the nicest person, best paying? What is it? Why do people work for you? I had 23 people working for me. I never said to one of them, why are you working for me? Do I think I'm the best boss in the world? Not even remotely. And I asked one person who'd worked with me, Annika, Dutch lady. She'd been with me 17 years. And I said, why do you work for me? She said, because you're so mean and tough that you couldn't go broke, and therefore I'll always have a job. I said, oh, thank you. It's a nice sort of pat on the back, sort of.
Job security at its best.
That's it. He's too mean to go broke.
Oh, that's so funny. I love that. But also too, she knows exactly what to expect. It's that you've got a standard and she will meet it. Otherwise, there is no job to be had. Yeah. Tell me, with the work that you get, what does a normal day look like for you these days in your work?
Apart from juggling medical appointments.
That and BX meetings.
Well, first of all, when I wake up in the morning, I pray a bit and then I decide to set up my day. And I prefer to do that first thing in the morning because I realise subconsciously I've thought about it overnight. Then I prioritise it because first things first, as Stephen Covey says in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or the quadrant, urgent, important, that one that they show. Get the things done. Otherwise, you deal with the little stuff. At the end of the day, the big stuff hasn't been done. So I prioritise what it is that I've got there. I work out what of that I can delegate to take some pressure off me. I'll review it. I need to finish it off. It may be part of my overall report, but I need other people to be doing part of the grunt work for me, because that develops them to see, why is he doing this? Well, where does this fit into the report he's doing for court or whatever? So there's that element of it. I try to always be responsive for clients. A tremendous number of clients I've got have come to me because they find it very hard to communicate with their accountant. And generally they start off as reasonably small business, and whether the partner thinks it's beneath them to talk to them, or maybe someone else will do it, or if they don't respond to them, the problem will go away. People want someone who's responsive.
Yep.
So you try to say, even if I say, look, I'm really flat out, but can I ring you in 2 hours' time? Will it wait that long? People appreciate that you've made them important.
Yeah.
You haven't said, I'm important, I deign to actually talk to you. It's you're very important, but I can't communicate with you at the moment. As the day goes on, although I have to do morning things for BX and stuff where I get up early in the morning, pre-breakfast and different things, I'm better at a nighttime person. So I don't mind staying and working longer. And I've surrounded myself with some staff who are the same thing. They're not the very, very best people to show up at 9 o'clock on the dot, but they're still there at 6:30 at night.
You want to make sure the coffee machine is always working in the morning, huh?
with the best coffee beans and a very good coffee machine, and about 9 different types of milk now. Oat milk, soy milk, high protein soy milk, light white, A2, everything that you've got. That people have got their own little preferences as to what they want. Good. You dictate it. I just put it in the fridge. That's it. So you give people what they want, meet their expectations. And that's the case. And if we're working hard, I'll make people a cup of coffee. I'm not, because I'm the boss, say, I'm thirsty, make me a cup of coffee. Someone puts down important work, and if I'm not busy at the time and they are, I'll make them a cup of coffee. Well, I think that's everyone pitching in together to achieve a group result. They're in a partnership together. They're reliant on me for their livelihood. I'm reliant on them for my livelihood. And the clients are reliant on our team to give them the right advice. The other thing with advice is a lot of people don't give advice. And as far as I'm concerned, whether it's AI, computer systems, Xero, MYOB, whatever, in a short period of time, people will do their own accounting, maybe even their own tax. What is the role for accountants in the future? The role for accountants is to be part of a team, that you build your A team around you. So I know what you're trying to achieve and I help you achieve that. So if I meet someone brand new, I say, can I borrow an hour of your life? Won't cost you anything. So first of all, I want to know about you. Tell me about you, how you grew up, married, kids, grandchildren, whatever it happens to be. What motivates you? What do you like doing? Then I find out about your business. And then I say, if we had this conversation in 10 years' time, describe you and your business. And some people just look at me blankly, and other people for 20 minutes go, all worked out. They say, when it was said by Kennedy, we're going to put a man on the moon and beat the Russians, NASA said, we can't do that in 2 years. He said, otherwise I'll stop wasting the money and we'll just pull apart NASA. So they tried to work out how they do it. Then one guy said, if a man just set foot on the moon, what happened before that? He got off a small craft. What happened just before that? It had to land upright, which it could probably do with a lighter weight. What happened before that? It left the mothership in orbit. What happened before that? It fired its retro rockets to get into orbit. So you've got to allow the fuel for that. What happened before that? Then you come back to being on the takeoff area rather than, so look at the end result and say, what do I need to do now, including who do I need to have around me? And I say to people who are starting off in business, build an A team, accountant, lawyer, financial planner, mortgage broker, IT person, HR person, whatever it is, you think you're too small for that, start the association now so that you build your A team around you. You do not have to have all of those skills, but you have to have access to people who've got those skills so that they can react quickly for you to be proactive or reactive, depending on what the drama is. Then I say to people, tell me about I can say things to you confidentially, and I think I can give you advice personally as well as in business, having been on this planet for a while. So tell me about the one thing, not 10 things, that most keeps you up at night. What's in the back of your mind all the time that you worry about? Whatever it is. Health, your family pet, your car, your business. How am I going to grow my business? How am I going to fund the growth? Whatever it is, tell me. And I'll tell you what I would do so that we see if we have a synergy that you can say, I need this guy as part of my team because I need that kind of advice. And the last one I say to them is, there was a guy called Cicero who was a famous Roman philosopher and teacher and lawyer and everything. And he'd say to people, if you had been guaranteed that you could never fail in life, what would you have done? People say, oh, that never came about. So wait a minute. Colonel Sanders started Kentucky Fried Chicken when he was 67. Ray Kroc got involved in McDonald's at 57. The guy who started Walmart was 59. Martha Stewart was in her late 40s. The guy who started Gap was in his 50s. All of their business life had been a learning curve up to that point till they found their passion and what they were extremely good at that they could ultimately make a great deal of money from. Didn't mean at 30 that they'd written themselves off and say, I'm already a dentist, that's what I'm going to have to be till I'm 65. You can reinvent yourself, and that's indeed what successful people do.
Yep, absolutely. In the work that you do at the moment, is there anything that you dislike doing?
That I dislike doing?
Yep.
My ego doesn't particularly like it when people don't take my advice, but I respect the fact it's their life and their money, and I can only give them the benefit of saying, if I was in your shoes, this is what I would do. And I'll explain as best I can why that's the case. But you can't make people do it. And I've said to people, the old thing in old-fashioned measurement terms, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or a stitch in time saves 9. Whatever it costs you at the start is a fraction of what it'll cost you at the end if the wheel falls off and I've got to try to fix it. So if we're part of that process ongoing, it won't be like that. So I'm the accountant for Louise and Therese with 2 of the BX franchises, and also Catherine and Chris Hodge with their franchise as well. And part of it that I give with them is strategic planning. They're good at what they do. They understand business. They run successful businesses. But my role in that is to say, keep on top of everything all the way through, right? It's all very well to forge ahead. Someone's got to be crossing the T's and dotting the I's and lodging the BASs on time and paying the super on time, etc. And that's one of the things proactively we're saying to people. When they change the rule to same payday super contribution, in July, by the 28th of July, you're going to have to pay the super for the April to June quarter. But during July, you're also going to have to pay weekly, fortnightly or monthly because of the new laws that have come in about super. So you've got to be planning now how much cash you're going to need in July not to get in a massive financial problem. Because what do people do then? They stop paying suppliers or they stop paying the taxman. Both of which at a point in time, you can push them along for a time and then it all implodes and the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
So you've got to have an accountant who also says, this is what's happening in the future. This is what you need to be watching out for.
Yes.
So I'm saying, if you employ 2 more people, you'll be subject to payroll tax. If you buy another property, you'll be subject to land tax. You don't want to say, oh, you've done it. This is what you're liable for. You want to make a conscious decision. If you make the conscious decision anyway, terrific. But don't let it just happen to you. You know, business is about planning. And all the old adages, failing to plan is planning to fail, and all the things they say are absolutely correct. I went to see Zig Ziglar, a motivator, in 1970. There was a room with 300 people, must have had 500 people in it. The next day he gave a presentation on setting goals. There was about 30 people attended, which I was one. And he did the thing of SMART goals, but an extended version of that. And part of it was goals are useless unless they're shared with someone who'll hold you accountable. So we have our diamond dinners where we say, this is what I'm going to try to achieve in the next month, or this is what's important on some of the communication things that we have. You share out loud and someone says, wait a minute, you told me 4 weeks ago you're going to do so-and-so. Procrastination or other priorities, or why didn't you do it? But you won't hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
You'll always find excuses. Been too busy, kids have been sick, running around, whatever it is. So you need someone to hold you to the line. So same as you said to me before, there it is. One-track mind, sustainable competitive advantage, unique selling proposition is like that. But there's all the little doors that come off all the ripple effect. And you've got to work out whether you've got to calm those waters on the side of you, or whether those ripples are worthwhile exploring as well.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the dream that you're working towards? What are your goals now?
I enjoy helping people in two ways. It's very biblical about, I think it's 1 Thessalonians 5:11 that says you should comfort each other and edify each other. And I've always believed that you need to pat people on the back and genuinely praise them, not flattery, but find things that you can say to people. Work out what their strengths are. Let them know their strengths as well. Develop people. That's what you leave behind as your legacy. So I've got 4 children. I've got 11 grandchildren. That's what I hope to impart them, part of my drive, ambition, hard work, etc. So I have some of my grandchildren already. My eldest one's 18. He started uni. And he said, why do you work at your age? I said, because I love it. I love helping people. I'm very good at what I do, and I get great joy out of it. So that's why I keep on doing it. And at some stage, I won't be able to. I've had many near-death experiences. I've got cancer at the moment. So what? If I survive it, I'll keep on doing what I do. If I don't survive it, well, I won't be here to worry about it. So just get on with things.
Yeah. I remember when I saw you in Sydney the other day, like probably a couple of weeks ago, I guess now. And yeah, you shared with us then about having the diagnosis, and doesn't sound pretty. I'm glad I'm not dealing with what you're dealing with right now. But the fact that you still turned up in your beautiful suit, coming to have breakfast with us all and doing what you've kept on doing, regardless of what's the fact that right now that health stuff is shifting for you. It's the sort of thing that I want. Like, it's the kind of thing that what you're doing now in terms of continuing to do the work because you love it so much, even when so much is changing around you with your health, it's what I aspire to. And it's what I want my clients to be able to create for themselves as well, is in a life that they love so much that even when the ground shifts underneath them, that they still keep doing what they're doing because that's what fills their cup.
I agree. I had a doctor client. He rang me up and said, it's Peter so-and-so here. And I said, yes. And he said, I said, what's happened to your voice? I said, I had a heart attack while I was riding my bike and I've had to have a stent put in. I said, I got 5 stents, and one in my artery and one in my shoulder. And so you get on with it. You survive. You've survived to enjoy life, not to put yourself in cotton wool and say, I'm waiting for the Grim Reaper. It's the end of my world. So the first thing is stop speaking like you're on your last legs. Get your voice back and start riding your bike again or doing the things that you were passionate about, which he did. But his wife said he really needed that little pep talk from someone outside of the family. Same voice saying to him, would you like to go for a walk? No, not really. I'd like to do this.
Yeah.
Bit of a whinge.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's really got to be someone who is outside of the family and who is further down the path of dealing with health challenges and can look back and go, get your act together and keep moving, because anyone else doesn't have the authority in that space.
And a great thing which I've got in my book, I had a great friend, Keith Pfeiffer, who died at 93, acting like he was still about 40. And we used to evangelize together. It was one of the great periods of my life. And we went out to make a presentation, and he said to me, you're a very smart guy. I said, smart and clever. 1, I've got the knowledge. Number 2, I know how to use it. And he said, yeah, good. He said, just go to your grave remembering this. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And once people know how much you care, then they'll open their hearts and their minds and let you in. And whether that's religion, business, personal relationships, whatever, that's what you need to do. And that's the relationship I've got. So I had this guy ring me up and say, it's so-and-so here. And I said, yes. He said, I've never met you. My grandfather says, we don't make any decisions without speaking to you first. And he said, I'm going to buy a house up at Foster. And I said, okay, what are you going to use it for? Weekender. Really? Well, I know where you live. It's not exactly a place you go for a weekend. I'll probably use it 4 weeks a year during my holidays. What happens the other 48 weeks? First of all, if it's not inhabited, your insurance may be invalid. You've got to maintain it. Someone's got to mow the lawns. Someone's got to clear out the letterbox. There's a whole range of things that have got to happen. And this is what it'll cost you to have that place. Differently, if you went up there and rented for the 4 weeks, the most expensive place you could find, you'd probably spend $1,600 a week. That's $6,400 a year, as opposed to the rest of it and the headache And then when you've got that place and someone said, do you want to go on a holiday to Vanuatu? You say, oh no, I've got my place up there that I've got to go to, like only a yacht. You have to attend to it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't go ahead with it and said, that was really great advice. I can see why my grandfather likes listening to you. That's good.
Sounds like he was almost surprised that you knew what you were on about.
That's right. That's right. Compulse you to talk to this guy, but I really don't want to. You know.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. One final question before we wrap it up for the day. And I guess this comes I guess back to the living eulogy that you spoke about before. But when people think about you and who you are in this world, what are the key things that you want them to remember about you, or the key concepts that they take from their interactions with you?
Number one, that I got absolute joy out of helping people. And I was given the skills to do it. And I think you have to use your talents to benefit other people, not just yourself. And what I've instilled in my children of work ethic, diligence, loving work, enjoying what you do, that extended to them as well. My father used to say to me, he had a number of very prominent business connections, but at one stage he was the CEO of Rothmans, had 1,300 employees. And I'd see him on a Sunday and I'd say, you look as though you can hardly wait to get back to work. He said, if you love what you do 5 days, the 2 days is a bonus. But if you hate what you do 5 days and only live for the 2 days, you got a terrible life. So
Yeah.
love what you do. And he said, that may be that you've got to work for the public service. Maybe you work for a big company, small company, self-employed. Find your niche that you really love. And I've had to say to some people, honestly, you should not be in business on your own. Go and get a job somewhere. You're not cut out to be self-employed. You will not make a success of it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to be remembered for that, and my descendants, like grains of sand on the beach. I just hope they continue to spread out. And if they want to have a look at me, they can come up and click on and have a look at what I sound like and what I look like.
Yeah.
Or read my book.
All of the above. All of it.
All of the above.
Because they'll all have different parts of Michael all intertwined with them, won't they?
That's right. And the great joy I get out of life, my 3 youngest grandchildren are 5. They all started big school this year. I said to one of my granddaughters, Tui, how's the first week of school going? She said, I love it so much. I made 3.5 new friends.
3.5.
I can hardly wait to her birthday in May to see what the half a friend looks like. And another one did a painting for me, and it was all black with a yellow dot. And I said, that's lovely, darling. I'm sure I won't get 2 of these for a present. What is it? And she said, it's a big dark cave so you can get away and relax. And I said, what's the yellow dot? She said, it's a mango because you like mangoes the most. And so the other one, not to be outdone, said, when I grow up, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini and just drive you around. I said, come on, all get on with your life. I can hardly wait. You know? But that's what brings me great joy.
Yep. That's beautiful.
And the family things where there's 20 of us together is a big deal for me.
Yep, absolutely. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Michael, for your time today. I have loved having another conversation with you and learning even more about who you are and what you do, and a little bit about how your brain works, because there's so much in there. But yeah, just really absolutely appreciate your time and your generosity today. So thank you so much.
That's okay. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.